sees the memes of production, and the like and subscribe button. If you want to be spicy, reporters only defend the protesters if it's over police brutality towards black people, but opposite when it's queer people curious. I disagree. I literally just think it's because after the murder of George Floyd, there was such a public consciousness of police brutality against black men that it was acceptable to defend that line. I think that for the most part, the job of these local news orgs is basically just to like toe the line and chase ratings because, you know, that's kind of their job, right? But I think that lately you've been seeing more and more of these organizations skip ratings in favor of ideological bias to the right. Keep in mind that after January 6th, even Fox News denounced it and largely denounced Trump. For a long while, Trump was not popular with Fox News, and Fox News was not popular with Trump. They were both talking negatively about each other. But inevitably, as Trump continued to be around, you know, and nothing really stopped him, they ended up merging back together again. I think that right now, and you see this at NBC, you see this at CNN. Remember The View? When the hosts of The View were told to tone down the anti-Trump commentary? The View were told to tone down the anti-Trump commentary by the CEO. What we're seeing now is that because the right like completely unambiguously controls the country, there is an understanding that you have to toe the party line. And as a consequence, I think that they're more willing to push the envelope in terms of like being openly partisan, even if it's not great for ratings. But, you know, I don't know. It's getting worse. Pride month in 5 days. I'm going to do kink and pride discourse, but in the opposite direction this time. I'm going to argue like you need to do more kink and pride. Yeah, it is going to be a rough Pride month, okay? It is going to be a rough Pride month, but you got to be louder than ever before, okay? Do not go quietly into that good night. Just put the segment in the bag. Just a second. We got a banger here. Okay, we got a good one here. All right, remember when we covered this and a few other things to this effect just the other day? Democrats spending millions to learn how to speak to American men and win back the working class. Party leaders are holding up in luxury hotel rooms in a strategy codenamed SAM, or Speaking with American Men, a Strategic Plan. I'm sure it'll go great. If there's anyone who I trust to manage this cultural project, it would be Democratic consultants at luxury hotels. Can you imagine being one of the consultants there who's actually like on the money? And like a lot of these people are just desperate grifters who want to make their paycheck convincing Democrats to not like change what they're already doing. But imagine being the one guy there who's like, yeah, you know, like I actually have a good set of propositions for you guys, and you're trying to find a way to explain it to them. Like you have to explain to Democrat leadership somehow that nobody cares if they're nailing interviews with NBC. Like literally nobody cares. Like fewer people watch an NBC interview than a Joe Rogan interview by like multiple times over, like exponentially less people. What would they even talk about? They have no messaging. They have no interest in actually fixing stuff. Yeah, it's probably just a way for them to like grift more money out of their donors so that they can cycle it around their favorite consultant buddies. Their consultant buddies are like, come on, man. Nobody's donating because everyone knows you have no plan or strategy or power and you're worthless and you've given the country up, you know? And the Democrats are like, you're right. We need to find some way of fleecing millions of dollars out of our donors, some way of cycling it around. I know. Yeah, and then you get this. And to that point, and I'm being perhaps a little bit mean here. You see this? I think I haven't actually watched this myself. Have I talked about Olivia Juliana on stream? That Biden dead ender who was like the epitome of like fake Gen Z relatability, but I don't know who these two are. Okay, you know what? That's fine. We don't need to intro everything. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. Let's just watch the dang video. Look at us. We're looking at a video that's been put out by some, we'll say, perhaps less than politically savvy individuals. Maybe that's like the lead up. We get into it. Let's just take a look. This is going to be painful. How do you know? Maybe it's good. I just want to see. Micah's a neolib. Yeah, these aren't exactly Bernie Sanders types. We'll say that much.
Olivia writes a Substack, which probably, statistically speaking, like 89% of y'all read already. But Olivia, I want you to talk about that Substack. And I also want you to talk about one of the newer articles that you wrote about why men drifted right in the previous election. I consider myself a resident expert on this because I am a man. So I feel like we could have an interesting conversation on the conclusions you reach in that article.
Wait, hold on 1 second. Do they link the, oh wait, I want to see that Substack article. One second. We should care more about young men. Well, that's nice. Republicans have taken over the cultural spaces beloved by young men, and Democrats have failed to create a space for them within our party. Okay. Substack, The Contrarian, The Masculinity Crisis, How Economic Struggles, and Andrew Tate are radicalizing young men. Oh, Andrew Tate's in the news today. Didn't he get hit with rape charges in the UK? Whatever. Let's look at it.
Article.
Yeah, so my Substack it's called A New Perspective, oliviajuliana.substack.com, and we're actually very close to hitting 100,000 subscribers on Substack. I'm very excited. But I write a lot about politics, and I hate that all these newsletters are the same. There's so many Substacks that you get on, and they're all telling you the same stuff. I don't want to do that. I want to give you a new perspective on the political issues that are going on. And so I keep seeing people talk about young men in the 2020 cycle or in the 2024 cycle, and they keep saying like, well, it's because like they're not getting laid enough and they feel judged, and you know, or
you guys need to calm down, okay? You need to dial down your preconceptions. I'm watching this video for the first time. You guys are coming into this like, oh my god, I hate her already. A lot of you didn't even know who the fuck she was, okay? I hate her. But you guys are just like, oh, well, I've been primed to hate her, and also she's fat, which very novel observation, guys. But I want you to put your thinking caps on, okay? Okay, let's develop like an authentic, personal dislike of her, okay? Should we not mindlessly agree with you? No, I want you to mindlessly agree with me. Just do it like after the cue, okay?
Or alternatively, well, they're just racist and they hate women. So like it's really, I see these takes coming out from both sides of the party wing, I would say. And I just think that all of that is wrong. I think all of it is wrong. And so I wrote this piece called The Politics of Getting Laid and Preachy Females. And I really dive into what I actually perceive it to be. And shocker, it's all economic anxiety. I think the Democrats have a really bad problem of every time we message to young men, we frame it in a way that is wrapped up in the same principles that we critique. We critique the patriarchy. We critique the way that men have hierarchy and power structures. And then we message to them as if not only is that the reality, but that they have to continue to be like that. So the example I use in the article is the issue of abortion. When we message to young men on abortion, or men in general, we do it from the position of, well, real men protect women. And if you care about the women in your life, you should be pro-choice. And that might be true. That is true. But we don't come at it from the approach of this is the reality that young men face about that issue. Because it's entirely possible that a young woman in college gets pregnant unexpectedly, and that could upend her life if she doesn't have access to abortion care. But it's also entirely true that the young guy who gets her pregnant, now he's on the hook to not only take care of this child that could be him, that could be coming into the world, but also to take care now of the mother of his child. And I think that it would be so much easier if we just understood that the problems we're having with young men shifting to the right, it's not because they don't agree with us on the policy. They do agree with us on the policy. It's because they feel like we don't understand the struggles they're facing, the actual struggles, not the perceived struggles of the masculinity crisis or whatever it is, the actual struggle.
I'm seeing chat. Chat's breaking apart. Chat doesn't know how to feel. I'm waiting. Not everything deserves a reaction. Learn to listen and observe, okay? You're all like, like, it's a good thing you guys aren't gambling right now. You know, some channels have like gambling points or whatever where they're like, you know, toss 100 bits onto will this be a good point? You guys you can't hold all your goddamn limes. Meanwhile, I'm over here waiting.
And instead, we just kind of want to blame them for all of our problems.
Right. I think there's a lot of that I just fully agree with. I mean, we just don't message to men, right? And I was like we don't message in a way that resonates to men. Like something that you kind of responded to that I've seen a lot is, well, the reason why
I am taking a look at A New Perspective, her Substack. One of the article titles is How a Biden Dead Ender Found Common Ground with Leftists. This past week, I attended a conference in Washington, D.C. alongside over 150 other social media content creators. The group was incredibly diverse, Creators came from all corners of the internet, fashion, lifestyle, photography, politics, and beyond. Oh, this is a tedious article. I don't want to read all that out loud. Oh, well, some good news. She says Newsom is not the Democrat we need in 2028. I disagree with everything she said, by the way, but I'll talk about that in a second.
Republican messaging resonates with men is because men want bad things, right? It's like men want to have sex and like own women, right? Like they want to dominate everybody. And Republicans say, you get to do that. And then Democrats can't say that. So we just lost men. It's over, right? Like, what are you talking about? Like a lot of times it will be men that are liberals who will like agree with that shit. I'm like, dude, what are you like? What is going on? Like there's a lot of men that don't think that way, obviously. And it's just such a negative view to take on like half of the human race.
Well, I also think it's just so abundantly clear that the people who say these things don't actually spend time talking to young men. You know this because we know each other in real life, but I spend a lot of time on college campuses. And I spend a lot of time with
young men.
I love young men. I love frat guys. And in that, I've realized like even the ones that identify as conservative are almost always pro-choice. They're almost always pro-gay marriage. You'd be surprised at the number of them who supported Black Lives Matter. And so I feel like people just kind of lump them into this box when the truth is, again, a lot of them are with us on the issues. They're just not.
So this is, okay, so this is really interesting because it's actually like a novel approach to a problem that the Democrats often have, which is the difference between policy and messaging, right? The problem here is that they're both incorrect. The reason why young men are shifting to the right is because they hate women. That is the reason why. This is evidenced by literally any experience you have with their behavior online where they have the veil of anonymity to protect them. Now, hatred is a complicated thing, right? Hatred and resentment aren't necessarily like a overt, obvious, like every time you see a woman, you vomit on the street kind of thing, right? There's a resentment that gets coded into the expectation that a good life is one in which women are some degree of subservient to you. It might not even necessarily be subservience that you want. It's more like a general resentment at the idea that modernity has robbed you of a certain gendered experience, which, you know, to be fair, it is true that it was probably a lot easier to get a relationship back in the 1950s, you know, when women couldn't like open their own bank accounts or whatever, and they were more dependent on guys. I think the problem is that this is still a policy focus, but it's a policy focus from the wrong direction, right? It's the idea of like, well, if like what we need to, so it's not that we have the wrong policies. It's that we need to not bash men. We need to like take a more economically considerate approach. But if you take a look at why people voted for Trump, it has nothing to do with policy. Seriously, have you had a policy conversation with a Trump supporter? They're incoherent. I don't doubt at all that a lot of young male Trump supporters are pro-choice and pro-gay marriage because they're not voting on policy, which is the issue. So changing your policy isn't going to fix that, right? They're voting on vibes. They're voting on emotional sentiment. They're voting on the idea that you can capture a particular life experience by voting for Trump or whatever he, you know, develops, whatever he leads to. I think like ultimately the issue here is that the Democrats are completely, utterly dickless, right? Like Democrats have no fire and no message. And because they have no fire and no message, they will not win. They will never be able to capture the country the way Republicans have. Even if they win, even if at some point they win in the presidency, they will never achieve this level of cultural prominence. What we're seeing right now with Trump, they cannot do it. It's not possible for them. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's no way about that without recognizing like the fundamental anti-empiricism of a fascist movement. It doesn't come from where the policy leads, right? It comes from the feelings that it gives people. Support for or opposition to gay marriage or legal abortion or whatever, they don't really speak to that underlying emotional narrative, which is why you have people who can say they care about the working man, then vote for Trump, a guy who obviously doesn't care about poor people. You know, that's why people will hold Kamala Harris to account for things she never even said or believes. But Trump will say 1,000 things that a Trump supporter will disagree with, and they'll be like, yeah, he was joking. He didn't mean that. You understand what I'm talking about?
Not part of our coalition because they feel like they're not welcomed in it.
They're not talked to, right? And
No.
yeah, they're not welcome. That's true. Like there's a lot of times where it's like being like masculine characteristics or seem like they're frowned upon, and they're kind of welcomed and championed by the Republican Party. And like masculine characteristics are not characteristics that are intrinsically bad, right?
This feels like a conversation that I had like 4 years ago in a very, very, very different social climate. You know what I mean?
Like, and I think that some Democrats have presented it that way. Now, obviously not most Democrats, but it's like this perception that a lot of guys have had.
This would have been like 2020 era, like wokeness has gone too far in demonizing men. But like right now, the last Democratic candidate, Kamala Harris, didn't say shit about wokeness. You know what I mean? She didn't touch on that at all. She was quiet about it. And like, nonetheless, you know.
In terms of issues, like good messaging is messaging that resonates with people's actual anxieties and lived experience, right? And so, yeah, like the Whatever podcast can resonate with men that are like incels or like struggling with women, right? Because
is the Whatever podcast the one where the guy couldn't open the pickle jar or something? Yes? Okay, gotcha. And then he like blamed the woman?
A girl was mean to them or whatever, and they're able to project upon like those women which come on and like look really dumb. They're able to say like, yeah, all women are like this. I feel better about myself. But there's all these other things that resonate probably more, which is like, man, expensive, right? Like, man, I don't feel supported.
That was Big Papa Fascist? That was that guy? That was Andrew? Oh man. Yeah, I guess the Jews greased the jar or something. I guess all that chain smoking didn't do much for his. You didn't know? No, I don't know. It's all like chubby bearded guys. I don't know. I'm face blind. And Z for white people too. That's crazy.
Right? Like, I don't feel like there's anywhere for me to go. Right? I feel like if something bad happens to me, no one's there to support me. That's the thing that a lot of men deal with, because men are a lot of times kind of put in the box of supporting other people. So no one's there to.
Okay. The problem here is that even if this is a thing that men are concerned about, which they are, men who turn to the right don't do anything to address it. They will claim that they're concerned about these things and then act in contrary ways. They'll say that we have like a male disposability crisis, and then they'll champion hyper-militaristic rhetoric, or say that like real men don't cross their legs, or you have to be eating nothing but like, you know, steak and potatoes every day, no vegetables, right? Like you have to separate the beliefs from the behaviors with these people, because there's a huge disconnect.
Support themselves.
Yep.
And it's like, those are things that we can absolutely talk to. Actually, we could probably speak to better than the Republican Party.
Yeah, I think speaking to that is also understanding the mentality that they're coming from too. So another example is when you look at the polling of what are the issues that are the most important to young men, one of the top issues consistently is immigration. If you actually talk to a young guy about how he feels about immigration, am I allowed to cuss on this?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about immigration. It's this idea of scarcity and
yet, who did they vote for, right?
Competition of, if you're a young man in America, you are expected to go to college or go to a trade school, get a certification, get a degree. Then you're expected to get a high-paying job. And then once you get your high-paying job, you're expected to find your wife and to buy a house and to have kids and to do all of these things. And if you don't do that, then you're a failure, because you are the man and you are the provider. And if you can't provide, then you're not actually a man. And so the Republicans specifically, they set this expectation, and then they make it almost impossible for young men to actually do those things, whether it's through not raising minimum wage, whether it's through the price of tuition going up.
I don't disagree with
all
this.
These different things. And so what ends up happening is you have these young guys who they're working every single day. They're working on oil rigs. They're working at...
Okay, wait. Let's be clear. The right-wing Gen Z cohort, they're not hardworking people. They're people who grew up on like really racist memes and TikToks and YouTube videos that maybe work out of college, but like the idea that there's like a bias towards these like super blue collar hardworking, like not really. I mean, there's a lot of like Gen Z Republican sociopaths who are like New York trust fund kids, right? And a lot of poor ones. too, but I don't think it's necessarily like a consequence of experiencing the real world or anything. I think it's a cultural movement that's a little bit like disconnected from your personal experiences. After all, if fascism and fascist like voting tendencies were motivated by material conditions, they wouldn't be fascists, right? Like the material conditions thing, the influence, the experience that you've had with work and the exploitation of wage labor, that then you would think it would like push you more towards like socialism, if anything, right? It's really more about like this greater social narrative and about fear and these emotional impulses. I don't know. There's like a half point here. I'm very interested in like looking into the Democratic Party kind of turning inward. The reason I wanted to look at this is because we don't see those meetings where Dem consultants are all talking with one another about how like maybe if they shell out like $5 million to a bunch of broccoli-haired neoliberal Gen Z types, one of them will create a podcast that rivals Joe Rogan's or whatever. We don't get to see into their head, I'm trying to see into their head.
Amazon, warehouses, maybe they work a 9-to-5 job. They're working every single day and they're still not getting ahead. So then we force young men to make this decision of either you can blame yourself or you can blame others. And if you're a young guy and you're working 8 to 12 hours a day, if you're paying all your bills, you're doing everything you can, and you're still not getting ahead, why do we expect them to think that they're the problem? They're doing everything that they've been told to do their entire life.
I also really don't think the Democrats at large are putting forward the messaging that men are bad. Again, like that just feels very out of date. Maybe like there was a period of time where progressive messaging was loud enough that it might have seemed like the Democrats at large were pushing some kind of hyper woke whatever. But like Jesus, the past couple of years, like, come on, it's been a while since we've been at that level.
And so that kind of little nagging, insecure voice in the back of the head, that's where Republicans really push through.
Pictured here, a Gen Z Republican white man.
That ideology and get to young men is because then they can convince them, well, this is the person whose fault it is. It's not your fault that you can't get ahead in America. It's the immigrants who are coming here. It's their fault because they're taking your high-paying jobs.
Right. And this hits on something that's so true. It's not that people are
what are your solutions
prejudiced against immigrants. I mean, certainly some people are, but most people are not. The critical mass of Americans that say they care about immigration are not. It's that Republicans have made immigration an economic issue. They made it an everything issue. I mean, they point to immigrants and they say, these are the people that are taking away your livelihood, the safety of your family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like, that's a lie. It's a vicious lie, but it's a lie that you can perhaps understand people believing if they have no other explanations offered to them. And I think there's something else about this that's really insightful. It's men are looking for an explanation about why things kind of suck in their lives, right? And so if you look at a lot of the content that men like watch, well, some of it's,
Vaush?
This right-wing content. A lot of it's like self-help stuff, right? Like who's the most into self-help? It's men. And what does the self-help say? It's your mind. It's your thought process. That's the reason why things suck, right? And it's not that people are even always eager to blame someone else. They're just eager to have an explanation, a solution to the suffering they're facing in their lives.
I had a really in-depth conversation a few weeks ago with some other content creators where I was talking about the messaging that the Democratic Party uses so often. And we talk about the, diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI. And I think where we've kind of fallen into this trap is we have made the party exclusive by trying to make it inclusive. And what I mean by that is...
Ooh, the thing I'm worried about is that we end up doing this weird whiplash thing where... So Hillary Clinton in 2016 weaponized progressivism against Bernie Sanders, right? With the very famous, like, sure, Medicare for all is great, but what is Medicare for all going to do about racism, sexism, whatever, right? Like, we obviously, Bernie Sanders is very much more progressive than Hillary Clinton, like, like easily and objectively so, but she weaponized it against him cynically as a way of turning people against the left. And what I'm worried about is that the next step for the Democratic Party is going to go in the opposite direction. They're going to distance themselves from what they describe as a cohort of toxic influences, left-wing activists who have given the Democratic Party the reputation of being anti-white or anti-male, and that in reality the Democrats aren't anti-white and anti-male, which is true. And they're going to very performatively disconnect, right? You're going to see, like, in essence, a kind of like blue MAGA thing, or yeah, what Keir Starmer is doing over in the UK, where they're like, whoa, hold on now, listen, hey guys, look, we're not that concerned with wokeness. Look at us. We don't even support trans people in sports. Look at us. We don't even we don't even care that much about like all this woke crap, LGBTQIAS2 plus whatever. We don't care. And they're going to do this because they're consultants, right? Which Olivia isn't a consultant, but you know, I guess she's in the same social circles as some of them, I'm sure, are going to say like, we took it too far with the wokeness. The Republicans have brutalized us with the accusation that the Democrats hate white men. We need to push back against that, you know? Look at Kamala stands for they, them. Look at that ad back in 2024 that did so well, right? You know what I'm talking about? I don't think they're necessarily hitting that point here. I just worry that this might be part of a greater conversation. In reality, what the Democrats are missing is a strong narrative. It's the fact that they're weak, inept, and don't believe in anything. If the Democrats were as committed to wokeness as Republicans are to being reactionary, this country would be a communist haven. And I'm borderline not joking. If the Democrats had the kind of messaging consistency and strength in being pro-LGBT or whatever that Republicans have in being against it, this country would be like 85-15 trans support. Like we would see a degree of pro-queer militancy literally unrivaled in all of human history. The Republicans are much, much, much better at weaponizing hate than Democrats are at weaponizing progressivism or anti-hate, whatever. In truth, cowardly tucking your tail between your legs and like waltzing back over across the woke line, you know, saying like, oh no, we're not that woke, guys, come on, vote for us, our policies are better, you know, that's not actually going to do it. And even if that does win you the presidency, it'll never win you the country, right? My argument is that the Democrats could have done a lot better if they hadn't abandoned every issue they were supposed to stand for. Do Democrats talk about gay acceptance? No. Do they talk about trans rights or trans people in sports anymore? Only to distance themselves from it. Do they talk about immigration? Yeah, to say how Biden was cracking down on the border better than Trump did. Like, they gave up on everything. Seriously, what social issues do Democrats stand for? What do you see them talk about? One of the reasons Democrats are always getting accused of believing things that like vaguely left-leaning journalists talk about, like the reason that the Dems get pinned for stuff that people on the left say broadly rather than the Dems specifically, is because the Dems are so weak in their messaging that the vague left-leaning journalist consultant crowd actually speaks for them. The Democrats themselves are basically silent. So of course everyone's going to just like pin the tail on the donkey. They're going to pin whatever message they can to the Dems. It's easy to attack the Republicans for what the Republicans say because they're always saying stuff.
Every room we walk into, the messaging that we're using is different. Every single one of them. And I think that that's the wrong way to go about it. I think we should have one specific, this is the message we use on this issue, because people are going to interpret that message however they want to interpret it. Everyone has their own form of cultural competency. So, and I think what Trump in particular is they kind of just say the same thing over and over again. And then if they ever change their opinion on it, they just say it with so much confidence that it's hard to convince people that that's not what they meant. So for us, I think it's just, we should just be saying the same thing about the same issue over and over and over again and let the voters decide what.
Look at defund the police. Dems jumped on it, then walked away. Yeah, with defund the police, a few Democrats spoken it loudly, the majority were tepid, and then very shortly after, anti-defund the police. Oh, no, we're not anti-defund the police. And yet, what do Republicans believe about Democrats? That they're all pro-defund the police. It didn't matter. Because Democrats have no consistent messaging, no spine, no actual, like, narrative to get around, it doesn't matter. Like, what? And by the way, if you ascribe any belief to the Democrats, odds are at some point they've believed it, you know? Are the Democrats in favor of defunding the police? I don't know. What year is it and who are you talking to? It's not like they believe in anything. If they ever saw polling support for defunding the police tick up to 51, I bet you they'd start talking about it again. Like Hillary Clinton suddenly becoming pro-gay marriage right when it became socially acceptable to. Dem consultants looking at every public opinion polling chart, waiting for it to tick up to 51 so they can start publicly supporting it. Whether or not they actually believed it to begin with is irrelevant. Obama as well, that piece of shit.
What it means through their own cultural lens, instead of telling them specifically what we mean every single time.
Right. The issue with pandering is it looks like you're pandering.
Yeah.
You don't seem genuine whenever you're saying something different in two different rooms with different demographics in them. Even if you are being genuine, but sometimes it's just not, right? Like the Kamala Harris's agenda for black men. I don't think that really went anywhere because it just seems so kind of contrived. It seems so like.
Well, it was just so, and this is the same thing. It's the same thing that Hillary Clinton did, where you'll have people on the right throughout these claims of like, well, what are you doing for this group? And we'll have these long-winded.
This guy's so deeply insufferable. You're just homophobic.
Like explanations with these details and these figures. And then we can go out and talk about it so we're blue in the face. But at that point, the conversation's already moved on because they didn't actually care about the answer. They cared about how they felt about the answer. And so I feel like we just get into these specifics so frequently that frankly, like people just don't care about.
But we need simple ideas that you articulate all the time, right? It's like, for instance, build more housing, right? And somebody says, well, how does that benefit this group? It's like, well, do you live in housing? Like there's some big economic issues that hit everybody. Affordability is one of the most central ones. And that's something that we should champion. And the good news is it helps everyone, right? It's not just good policy all the time, but it's also like, we don't need to have different messages for different groups in large part because there isn't different policy solutions for different groups. Like targeted policies are usually ones that are kind of watered down, right? They're kind of less, like increasing funding for specific grant programs for certain races of businesses. I mean, that's great and all, and we've had that for a long time.
You guys are all being so antagonistic, man. I should have, if I opened this up with, hey, I like these two creators and I'm interested to hear their take, I bet you a lot of people in chat would be like, oh, I see the virtue of this. You people are sheep, and there's a reason why I'm the streamer and you're the viewer. Give me your money. Give me your money. I see white names in there. Give me your money. You're probably going to waste on like a vape pen or something, okay? Give me that shit. How much do vape pens cost? Like $30 or something? Give me $30.
But that's not going to fix the big economic inequality and opportunity issues we have in this country. The only thing that could do that is dramatic investments, is a huge expansion of the social support system, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the kind of stuff that we should probably focus on talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The problem, and I said this yesterday, the problem is that, like, again, it's not a policy thing, right? Because if it was actually about building a social safety net or a social support system or making things better economically, they wouldn't have voted for Trump. They would be like Bernie Sanders dead enders, or they would have voted for Kamala in a harm reduction sense. Nobody is voting for Trump because of policies. No matter what, if you ask them why they voted for Trump, they might say policies. They're lying. Or in all likelihood, they're not lying. They're just stupid because, again, they voted for Trump, right? They don't understand why they're voting for Trump, and they know they would sound stupid if they said, well, that was the vibe. But that was, in fact, the vibe. And everyone felt it. Did anyone feel a Kamala Harris vibe? Oh, listen, to be fair, I did at the DNC. But after the DNC, it was just a slow trickle downhill, wasn't it? There was energy up until that moment. But after that, we know what the vibe was.
You look at things like, the healthcare plan, or, homeowners, like first-time loans up to this amount or this percentage. I need Democrats to start talking like, well, what's your healthcare policy? My healthcare policy is healthcare. Also, like, this just doesn't work if you look at literally any other contest politically between right-wing and left-wing factions in countries where liberalism has become socially irrelevant. Look, for example, at Bolsonaro versus Lula da Silva in Brazil, right? Back in, when was the election? Was it 2022 that I'm thinking of? Look at like the competing interests here. What was the promise of Bolsonaro? He hates gay people, and he's not woke, and he's very masculine. And yeah, he's cool. And what was Lula's promise? Well, social democracy, right? Same with 2018 to a large extent. I mean, I guess it was like an anti-corruption thing back then. It's not about policy. The policy is important. So Bernie Sanders is wrong?
I think Bernie Sanders is incomplete. And I said this yesterday. Bernie Sanders proposes a set of policies that are excellent, politically excellent and excellent for like life, for human life. But the messaging factor, it can't just be neutral, populist, let's all come together and get our healthcare messaging. You have to be hateful and vindictive. You have to create an overwhelming social tide. And by the way, I would argue that the Bernie bros did this for Bernie Sanders back in 2016. Bernie Sanders was the policy template, but they supplemented in antagonism that he couldn't, which I think was justified because they were up against Hillary Clinton, a vile piece of shit, you know? A lot of that antagonism was just Bernie bros pointing out that their opponents were stupid, insincere, lazy corporate Democrats who hated the working class, but they weren't part of Bernie's campaign platform officially. And I don't think they could have been. But now in this day and age, against Republicans, hate's got to be part of your messaging.
Should be good and cheap.
Right. Because Trump does. He doesn't explain, like, I'm going to do price transparency, like a price statute, and I'm going to expand the premium tax credit.
Hate towards who? Republicans. Like they do to us all the time.
Whatever. Like, no. Republicans never say the word tax credit. Why do we say the word tax credit all the time?
I think it's because, like, we're still operating in this, like, fallout of Reagan, Bill Clinton mentality. But the difference is that most Democrats don't have the charisma that Bill Clinton had. And so instead of...
Please, Christ, do not start glazing Bill Clinton.
Leaning on the charisma, they lean on the details. And I just don't think it translates the same way. We just come off as a bunch of dorks. Like that's just the
not
truth.
Necessarily
we just come off as a
wrong.
bunch of dorks. Nobody wants to listen to a dork.
I think voters like people they think are smart, but they don't like people that they don't understand, right? They want to feel like they understand what you're saying and it's smart, not just like, I don't understand what they're saying, therefore they're smart, right? And they also like simple solutions.
I do also agree with the idea that voters like it when they can understand what you're talking about, I guess.
Like we don't need to talk about each detail of each healthcare policy. We can just say, like you said, what we're going to do, right? And you can tell people the basic details about how you're going to do it, but you don't need to really get in the weeds. And you also don't need to talk about 20 things at once. I think that's part of the issue with the Democratic coalition. The Republican coalition is like, we want border security, tax cuts, whatever. There's like 5 things that they actually care about. And then there's minor things. And for the Democrats, it's like, well, we're really diverse, actually. We want a lot of different things, but we need to learn to prioritize because not every issue deserves to be brought into the spotlight just for any reason. Whenever you go to a door as a Democrat and you knock on the door to talk to a voter about the things that your party supports, they should already know what those things are. If they don't, that means that you're not doing a good job messaging. If you go to...
I don't disagree with this.
Somebody, you ask them, what does Trump support? They're going to be able to list at least 2 things, probably. They can't list...
I mean, yeah, you are correct. It is worth pointing out that nobody ever understands what Trump is talking about, and that doesn't seem to bother his supporters that much at all because they like the vibe of what he's saying. They don't follow the details of what he's saying because Trump's speeches are often incoherent. Like they actually, like you can transcribe them into text. They don't actually make sense or say anything. They just like the vibe. Most people are like that. Unfortunately, most people are stupid cattle that need to be led around. The Democrats also believe that most of their supporters are stupid cattle. It's just they're bad at leading them around. Keep that in mind. I don't think Republicans have a lower opinion of their voter base. I actually think Republicans have a higher opinion of their voter base, which is why they dedicate so much time and effort to leading them around. Meanwhile, the Democrats will like drop the leash and then get like confused when nobody's following them. Like they don't do a good job leading, they don't do a good job messaging, they don't do a good job pulling people along to follow. They're bad at every step of the way. Like every step of the way they're bad, and then they act confused over like why the Republicans are leading more people. It just doesn't, it's very frustrating.
Anything for Kamala Harris. $30,000 home buyer tax credit, whatever. No, there's 0% chance they could list anything because there's just so many ideas and they're all so contrived.
Well, no, that's not true. They'll say that she supports sex changes for transgender illegal aliens in prison.
A center of her platform, yes.
It was a center part of her platform. Yeah, I mean.
By the way, Kamala Harris would have done better if she had unironically said, yes, I support that, rather than just saying, I'll follow the law. I genuinely believe that, because every Republican already believed that she believed that.
It's just the same thing over and over again. It's kind of like...
By the way, I do support that. I do. When you have people held in prison, their necessary healthcare, their healthcare requirements have to be met by the state. And as transgender care is considered to be life-saving care, which it is, then you would, then it just logically follows. Yeah, easy. That's an easy one. That's like, yeah. You think about it for 2 seconds, kablamo. Yeah, get their dental work done as well. Oh, you don't want to pay for that? Then don't keep them in prison, dumb f***. You retard. Oh, you don't want to pay for prisoners? Well, then don't imprison them.
You know, guys, what are we doing here? I think of it as America, or voters in general, when they're deciding who they want to vote for, they want a mom and they want a dad. Not to be homophobic, because there can be, you know, same parents here. They want a mom and a dad. They want someone who, in times of uncertainty, can bring them comfort and can make them feel like there's someone there for them.
I'm sorry, did I miss something?
Not to be homophobic, it's kind of like, you know, guys, what are we doing here? I think of it as America, or voters in general, when they're deciding who they want to vote for, they want a mom and they want a dad. Not to be homophobic, because there can be, you know, same parents here. They want a mom and a dad. They want someone who, in times of uncertainty, can bring them comfort and can make them feel like there's someone there for them. And then they also want someone who's going to be stern, who's going to have their back, and who's going to say the tough things that need to be said.
I literally just think people want to be energized and people want to believe in something. I literally just think it's that. I think it is crazy that the Republican Party, at its core, like its leadership, is about as crazy and as crazy in the same direction as their most dedicated followers. Like, if you look at the core leadership of the Republicans, they're crazy MAGA types, right? Just like their supporters. Meanwhile, the core leadership of the Democrats are not even human beings. They are thoughtless, mindless. They are New York State, Wall Street ghouls who believe in nothing. And the most aggressive, ardent Democrat supporters are 20,000 times as aggro as the party itself. Like, if you go into like the suburbs outside of Pasadena and you find like an aunt who has the, you know, in this house all lives, or not all lives, sorry, Black Lives Matter, science exists, whatever, that sign in their front lawn, the woman who lives in that house will be a militant warrior for the Democratic Party in a way that the DNC itself could never be. You know?
And I feel like we try to offer voters comfort, but instead of coming across as like mom or dad, we kind of come across as like the aunt who you kind of don't like her, but she gets you really good Christmas presents. So like every once in a while you'll go visit. Like, I feel like that's kind of how we come across as like...
I don't follow through with this at all, to be honest with you.
Well, I don't really trust the Democrats, and I don't really like...
I do not trust any autopsy of the Democratic Party that doesn't begin with holy shit, look at what Chuck Schumer is like. Like, you have to, like, literally from step one is like, oh my god, it is insane how spineless and uncommitted and free of belief these people are. Like, that has to be step one. Everyone sees it. Everyone sees it.
Them that much, but the Affordable Care Act was
also, you are not going to see her talk about what Gaza did to the Democrats.
Cool. And like that's kind of the extent of it. Is how people feel about us most of the time.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the family theory of partisan politics.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that was interesting. I'm happy we took a look at that, you know. Over the next couple of years, there are going to be lots. By the way, I think a lot of you guys were too mean, especially to the fella. People are going to be writing quite a bit on like why the Democrats are the way they are, and I'm going to continue to have like loud opinions on that. You know, like we're going to be talking about that for a while. So if you get bored of that content, make sure to like and subscribe and leave. Why is my AC not turning off? I'm hitting the button. Turn off. Turn off. Is this out of battery? Motherfucker. All right, I'm just going to leave it on. I don't hate the Dems. I hate Dem leadership. Me when I'm not talking about rural Americans. We got a lot more to talk about, folks. Okay. So you know how we've been big on the illiteracy pill lately? Very, very big on it. Something a little socially deleterious about the fact that like half of Americans read at a 6th grade level. I saw a little bit of this on Twitter. How about we read it together? Grading for equity coming to all San Francisco high schools this fall. This looks grim. District materials highlight a decrease in A grades for more privileged students. This is dark woke. This might actually be dark woke. My